I don't even want it. Really?
That's cool.
I'd like to introduce you to one of the members of our group, Craig Cook. He's going to start us off with a prayer, and then we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
O Spirit of God, we ask you to help orient all our actions by your inspirations. Carry them on by your gracious assistance, that every prayer and work of ours may always begin from you, and through you be happily ended. Amen.
Amen.
Join us in the pledge.
Numbers on. Salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Good morning, Patriots. Welcome to the RFTC Patriots For The People rally. We are all here today to fight for our rights as American citizens. This is our country. Let's take it back. Let's take back what is rightfully ours. I used to be a shy, quiet girl. My biggest fear was giving a speech in front of a big crowd of people. I'm here to tell you today that shy, quiet girl is gone. And I am here facing that fear head on with my eyes wide open. I am a true American patriot who loves her country and all of the freedoms I have. My other fear is that our country is falling apart because of all of the crooks in the White House. And I don't think I need to mention their names.
Yeah.
I'm not a real history buff, but I know enough about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence to know where they were signed. So, fellow patriots, since we are back to where it all began, let our voices be heard. Obama is trying to destroy our country by taking away all of our rights. I don't know about all of you, but I'm not going to sit back and watch
I don't even
this
want it.
happen. I'm going to be one of the many American patriots trying to make a difference. One of the many trying to regain our freedom and rights. Many members of our families have fought for our country in the armed forces, past and present. Let's not forget them. Let's make them proud. Let's show them all that their true patriotism was not forgotten. Let's show them that we, the people, are honoring their fight and all of their efforts to keep our freedom alive. Let's all continue their fight into the next generation to keep the American dream alive for our children and grandchildren. So I ask all of you this question. Are you willing to join the fight to keep America alive and our freedoms free?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Already in.
Fellow patriots, that is why we are here today, to make a difference. It seems they are trying to take away all of our rights as American citizens more and more every day. We the people need to take a stand against all of the evil in Washington, D.C. Let's show them that we are not going anywhere. We are all here to fight for our rights, and we are not backing down until we get what we want. The crooks in Washington need to go. Thank you all for being here today, and now I would like to turn this over to my husband, Bill Longacre.
Good morning, Patriots.
Good morning.
I'd like to thank you all for showing up here today. I'm sure there's a lot of veterans in the crowd. If you're a veteran, raise your hand. That's why we're here today. We're here to defend you guys and the rest of America. Hopefully we can wake up the masses to what's going on. We are here today because we love this flag and everything that it represents. We will not let politicians in D.C. take away our rights. That the Constitution guarantees the American people.
Oh yeah.
Our country and its citizens deserve better treatment than what we are receiving by our elected elite in Washington.
Woo!
There are too many scandals for me to
I don't even want
the list. We have many patriots who would like to speak to you today. So please enjoy their speech and message that we are giving you today. This event will be publicized on Facebook and all over the internet. Let's make this go viral. help us send a clear message to Washington that we the people are pissed off and we're not going away.
No.
We would like to thank all the servicemen and women, past and present, for their sacrifices for keeping us a free nation. We would like to use this flag, Old Glory, to honor all of our armed forces who have paid the ultimate price. We will fight to make sure our servicemen and women are treated right and not forgotten by career politicians who are trying to take away their medical benefits. They fought for us, now we're going to fight for them. We are here today to show Washington that we will not let the Constitution be declared irrelevant or an outdated document, so eloquently stated by our President. Thank you all for coming today to show your support. We would like to thank all the volunteer fire police and also all the law enforcement officers who are working really hard to make this a success for us. After this is all over, we're going to line up down there at that stop sign, and there's going to be an escorted ride to Fairmount Park. With that said, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Dan Gray. Hard act to follow. Just a bit of housekeeping very quickly. Some of you know me, a lot more of you will. Operation American Spring is going to be a rally that's going to be about, let's see how many we got here, about 500,000 times this size. And that's May 16th. Washington, D.C. I'm editing and I'm a speaker for them. I was on with Colonel Riley on the radio a couple times this week. You'll hear a lot of rumors, just as you might have heard rumors about this gathering. Don't believe them. Peaceful people gathering together to exercise their rights are a threat not to government, but to criminals who have taken our government. And the last bit of housekeeping, May 19th, I'll be coming back from OAS in D.C., having a rally with John Storm, who is sick. He's injured. He wasn't here today. But we'll be in Harrisburg on the steps of the state capitol the day before primary. You can find the information on Facebook. So before I talk to you about the Constitution, let me talk to you about why I'm fighting. I don't like this. I don't really want to talk to a bunch of people. I'd rather talk to you one-on-one over a cup of coffee or a beer. I don't like publicity. I'm a private person. My family has never been public about stuff. We just, like most of you, want to live our lives. But a couple of years ago, it's almost 2 years, I got sick and tired of the union that I'm forced to be part of, and I sued them in federal court. That's SEIU, and I won. And because of that, Heritage Foundation, which I'm a Heritage Sentinel, if you're not, maybe you want to consider being one, they invited me to the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. That's a year ago. And I met Jim DeMint. And I asked Mr. DeMint, who was a U.S. Senator who had just stepped down to become head of Heritage, why he would give up a safe Senate seat that he had 4 years to go and could easily get elected for another 6, when he's the second poorest guy in the Senate, which means he's honest. And he said he didn't think that America had 2 years. Last September, I met Colonel Allen West, and I asked him a question. I said, Colonel West, the people who have sworn that oath to the Constitution that I did, and that many of you did, will they follow that oath if they're given an illegal order? And he said, oh, absolutely not. He knows the men and women who serve our country and the police officers who are also sworn, and he said, no, they wouldn't. But if you read what Colonel West has been writing lately, just in the last couple of months, he's beginning to think that maybe they're not. And I don't mean the vast majority of police officers and military men, but they're purging the ranks of the military and the police. They're putting an awful lot of pressure. That thin blue line has got to end. We cannot allow people who abuse the office to have the power of office. You're not covering for your brother if your brother is a crook. It makes you a crook. So what is the Constitution? A lot of people have a lot of ideas about what it is. There have been years and decades and centuries of interpretations by courts. Lots of learned people have talked about it. But it's really simple. It's a contract. It's a compact of negative liberties. That's a quote from the current occupier of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Obama said it is a compact of negative liberties, and he doesn't like that. What it means is that the government can't take liberties if we follow it. The Constitution does not grant you rights. Those rights exist. Whether you believe, as I do, that they come from God, or if you're an atheist, I'm fine with that as long as you acknowledge that those are natural rights that all human beings have. The right to speak, the right to associate, the right to worship or not as you please, etc. Our founders had a vision. They had a vision of what could be in this country. We've never lived up to it. We've never been the shining city on a hill. Those of you who actually study history realize that there never was a golden age. We've always been better than the rest of the world, but not nearly as good as we could be. That's a challenge, and it's up to us. The founders understood human nature. Unlike the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, the current so-called progressive revolution, because they're not progressives, they would be kings. They just use that rhetoric. When I was a boy, Watergate, and the threat was from the right, but it wasn't really the right. Nixon wanted to be a king. Now the threat's from the left, but they're not really of the left. They're not liberals, they're not progressives, they're fascists.
Yep.
The founders understood that every one of us is subject to temptation. In a religious sense, sin, bad behavior, and that the more tempted we become, the more likely it is we're going to succumb to it. Now all of you have your price. You do, and so do I. We all do. And that's why the founders put limits on power, because of all the 7 deadly sins, there's one that's overarching all of them. Kind of like in Lord of the Rings, that one ring that binds all the other evils together. And that's the will to power. Those people who want power over themselves don't scare me one bit. I'm pleased to see you armed. I'm pleased to see you standing on your own 2 feet. I'm pleased to see you doing what you want to do with your life. If you're not hurting anybody else, have at it. I can like it or not. But when somebody wants to have power over others, when they want to rule, when they want to have the right to say, I can have what I want, you can have nothing unless I give it to you, and I can take what you want. Those people, they're the dangerous ones, because they use every other one of those 7 deadly sins. You look around at America today, and we're lazier, fatter, stupider, more drunk, more drugged than ever before. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of those behaviors if that's your personal choice in life. It's the way it is. But they want us to be evil. Hollywood pushes it. All those so-called well-meaning, well-sounding laws with unintended consequences, those consequences are far from unintended. We talk about all these amendments to the Constitution. The Constitution was not acceptable to the states without the Bill of Rights. The states are considered to be the ones who came together and formed a contract to give up some of their power so that we could have national defense. Certain things, the state of Pennsylvania is pretty big. We cannot field our own full-scale army if the Russians were to attack. We don't have a navy. There are some things the federal government can do and should do. And it should regulate commerce between the states, because you can't have one state being unfair to another one. So the states gave up some power. We talk about these amendments. We talk about the First Amendment most, and we mention that. That's your right to speak, your right to associate with who you want to. That's a voluntary association. You choose. And your right to worship if you wish. And of course the right of a free press, which is very sad to say, the mainstream press has sold out, and you know it. But there are press outlets out there. Watchdog.org is one I recommend. I've written for Watchdog Wire, that adhere to strict journalistic rules. They won't print it unless they can prove it. And if it's opinion, it'll be clearly labeled. We talk about the Second Amendment. Most of us have one of these, maybe more than one of these. We know how to use these.
Yep. Show them.
Let's
Hold
see
them
them.
up. That's what keeps them free.
He's absolutely right. And those people who are worried that there's going to be some kind of violent insurrection should keep in mind that as long as we don't give up our weapons, we outnumber them. In the state of Pennsylvania alone, there are more armed hunters with high-powered weapons who know how to use them than all federal armed forces and police forces worldwide.
Yeah.
We talk about the Fourth Amendment, which is search and seizure. Pennsylvania just got in line with the federal government and said, you don't need a warrant. You want to look inside somebody's car? Look. You just need to have a good reason. Make up one. You want to look in somebody's laptop? You want to look in your papers? That's what they say. That's not what I say. We talk about the Fifth Amendment, which is due process. Civil forfeiture. You ever hear of that? That's where they stop you. You've got some cash on you. They take the cash. They have a federal lawsuit or a state lawsuit that says the state versus $8,000 in cash. Not you. The cash has to defend itself and prove that it's legitimate. You can apply to the court to be a friend of the cash. And you can say, look, I can prove that this is mine and it's legitimate. I saved it up over years. But guess what? You're guilty till you're proven innocent. That's not the way it's supposed to work. We talk about the 10th Amendment, and that's the one everybody's starting to focus on now, which is states' rights, which says that any power not specifically granted and enumerated to the federal government is the property of the states. But the one that's forgotten, the Forgotten Amendment, is the one that brought you here today and the one that's causing a fire, a grass fire, to raise itself up all over America in all kinds of groups, and that's the 9th Amendment. I want you to go home, and if you don't have a constitution with you, and look at the 9th Amendment. That says that the parties, the powers that are not enumerated to the federal government or the states, enumerated, specified, detailed, that's what they can do. If it's not in that document, it belongs to you. Every one of those rights belongs to you, individually, the people. Constitutional experts will consistently say that, as I mentioned before, the Constitution is a contract between states to cause the federal government. Some will even say, well, it's not even the states anymore, it's the three branches of the federal government. It isn't. You boil everything down to basics. The feds couldn't exist without the states cannot exist without the people. The people give their consent to be governed. Coming down here, there was a detour because they're doing some construction. Every one of us agreed that when the flagmen put out their sign saying stop or slow, to go around those cones. We agreed because it made sense. However, driving down here through 55-mile-an-hour zones, I counted about 200 cars with me within eyeshot, whatever you call it. We were all doing 75 because we didn't agree to that law. If the police want to, or the military, or a federal armed agent wants to pick on you, or me, they can do it. Tough as I may be, I cannot defend myself against 250 armed agents and snipers with tanks and helicopters. No, I can't. No, and neither can you. However, Bunkerville, that's the Bundy Ranch, showed us something. It showed us that unlike Waco and unlike the Move disaster in Philadelphia, when patriots band together and insist that this will not stand, the other side backs down because they realize, and I'm not going to mention a lot about Connecticut because we have a speaker from Connecticut who's going to tell you about their situation, but when they caused, by the stroke of a pen, several 100,000 peaceful citizens to become felons instantaneously, the surprising thing to them was those people are willing to be felons.
They didn't register their guns. They didn't turn over their high-capacity magazines. They just nullified the law. The law only works if we're willing to obey it. And this is what the press does not want you to know, and the Republican Party doesn't want you to know, and the Democratic Party doesn't want you to know, and the giant corporations don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that you have the power.
Yep.
They want you to think that they have all the power. And if we allow them to divide us, if we allow them to say half the country is bad, whichever half you happen to be on, that you can't be together because your skin colors aren't the same, or you didn't come from the same place on the planet when you came to America, or you grew up speaking a different language, or you worship in a different manner. They're wrong. We are the 99%. It's far less than 1% that want to rule us. And I have far more in common with a legal Mexican immigrant who came here to be a citizen, not the illegals. We don't have jobs for them right now. They can be guest workers someday if we rebuild the economy. I have far more in common with a black woman living in North Philly. I have far more in common with some gay guy in San Francisco than I do with anybody in Washington, D.C. or Harrisburg. Because all we want is the right to run our own lives. And I don't care what they do with their lives. That's their business. And it's our fault. The Constitution is a scrap of parchment written by dead white European males. They got that right. It's true. It's just a bunch of ideas written down on a piece of paper. It doesn't work unless the people who have that power exercise that power. And we failed. Here's some numbers for you. The unemployment rate is a remarkable 6.3%. It's plummeting. And they say this is not fraud like it was in 2012 when the Census Bureau cooked the books, and there's actual criminal charges pending on that, just before the election to make it look good. 6.3%. I work for the unemployment office in Allentown. I've been there 12 years. I'm a claims examiner. The number they don't tell you is that 92.5 million people, a record number of people, are unemployed. No, sorry, they're not unemployed. They're not in the workforce. That's the phrase they use. I'm sorry, but unless you got terribly ill, retired, married rich, or hit the lottery, you didn't leave the workforce. It left you. You want some other numbers?
Yeah.
All right. Inflation is at record lows. Do you know why? You go shopping, you fill up your car at the gas pump. They don't count energy prices or food prices. How many of you can drive your car without gas? I don't hear anybody. Is there anybody here who doesn't have to eat and feed their family? But they don't count it. And we're supposed to believe it. And the great thing is, nobody believes it. You can't find a single person in this country who will believe the numbers that are being reported anymore. It's awesome. I am grateful that Obama was elected. I am grateful for the idiots who are running this show right now. If we had reasonable people who continued this gradual progression towards tyranny, they might just do it. But they got greedy. Hubris is something the ancient Greeks coined. It's a word that means when the gods would make you fail, first they'd make you crazy. And they got crazy. They're crazy right now. They think they're going to pass this immigration reform, this amnesty. Do you know, by the way, that since Reagan made that big mistake of allowing the first amnesty in '86, the number of illegal aliens in this country, numbers we're talking here, is 11 million. It was 11 million in 1990, and in 2000, and in 2010. And last year in 2013, it was 11 million. It's not 11 million, folks. The best estimates are somewhere around 35 to 40 million. And we're 92 million jobs short. So there's a good start. I don't want to round them up or put them in camps. I just don't want them working here until we rebuild the economy and they can come in to do the jobs Americans won't do. And I work at unemployment. Like I told you, there are no jobs Americans won't do. Now, there are all kinds of terrible, egregious examples of scandal that are ignored that most of you do know about, and I want you to share every day with other people. We all know about Benghazi. Just yesterday, emails came out. It's like the smoking gun in Watergate, the tape. There's proof now, and they're starting a House Select Subcommittee to investigate it. We all know about, here's one that was on Drudge this morning. There's a company called Vigilant Solutions. They're in charge of the license plate scanners. They have 2 billion records. Of those, probably 5 or 10,000 are criminals. The rest are you and me. And they have a document that every police officer has to sign that says you are sworn to silence and secrecy if you want to look at this data, if you want to look at where this person was when this license plate passed this camera. And the reason is because they don't want you to know about it. How can we miss this? Everywhere you go, there's a camera. Right now, there's satellites. 30 years ago, when I was saying this stuff to my friends, they'd hand me a square of tinfoil and say, have another beer and make yourself a hat. And 20 years ago, people said, NAFTA, gee, you're probably right. Nothing we can do about it. 10 years ago, a lot of people were saying, that is right. But I'm really scared, and I don't think that I should do anything about it because they'll get me. Today, people are saying, we know it's true, and we must take action. We must step up. Now, some more numbers for you. Just imagine what would have happened over the last 40 years had we decided every single election cycle to get rid of 1 in 20 politicians. That's 5%. 1 in 20. Just get rid of them, never let them get office again. They never would have gotten this bold. But we kept electing them. We elect people who are less. And it's not a choice between the lesser of two evils. It's the evil of two lessers. They just kicked Bob Gazzardi off the ballot. Whether you like Bob or not, he's local here. He's the only one who was against Common Core. He's the only one who knows the Pennsylvania Constitution and wants to follow it. He's the only one who truly wants to cut taxes. He's off the ballot. You don't have a choice.
Right in.
I'll tell you what, I've interviewed Bob on the radio. I've interviewed Ken Krawchuk, who's a libertarian running for governor here in Pennsylvania. I've interviewed Glover, Paul Glover from Philadelphia, who is a Green Party guy. And I'd take any one of them, because every one of them likes the Constitution and voluntary associations. And when I interviewed Glover, it was amazing. Here's a guy who was progressive his whole life, and he's realized that the Kool-Aid is poisoned. He's realized that what the so-called progressives in office have been promising is not what they're delivering, that they're all about power, not about voluntary associations. I told you I sued SEIU. I didn't sue them because I don't like unions. I sued them because I don't like corruption. And I cost them $1 million last year, not my money. They just took $1 million less. That they can't now feed to their corrupt politicians of both parties to get more power. So those are some numbers for you. The biggest thing that presents a challenge, and I hear this from everybody all the time. I heard this today from 4 different people, separately, separate conversations. The American people, we're lazy, we're apathetic, we're uneducated, we're scared, we're self-absorbed. Guess what? You're right. That's normal. But I don't want you to think that that's a pessimistic viewpoint, because there's another side to that as well. You all know, because it was in your lifetime, some of you, and it was in your parents' lifetime or your grandparents' lifetime, that December 7th, 1941 is when Germany and Japan declared war on us and we declared war on them. December 6th, 1941, there was only a handful of people who saw the danger or who were willing to fight against worldwide tyranny. You all know about Paul Revere's famous ride, April 18th, 1775. Been a poem about it. Everyone knows that one. April 17th of 1775, there were almost no Americans in this country. 3 million people. Ben Franklin was not an American. John Adams, Samuel Adams, the radical, was not an American. Patrick Henry was not an American. They were citizens of their states. They considered themselves to be Virginians or Massachusetts citizens or Pennsylvania citizens, but they were Englishmen. All they wanted, there was no revolution. They didn't change anything. What they wanted was just the rights of Englishmen, and they thought once they won, they might just go a step further and put it down in writing, because England has no written constitution. But this is a continuation of a fight that's been going on for a very, very long time. The Spartans at Thermopylae fought this fight, and at Marathon. Time and time and time again, people stood up, devoted everything they had so that their children would live free. Time and again, they got squashed, put down. Very few wins, and they're very crucial. The Battle of Britain, when a handful of inexperienced fighter pilots, young men who had no training, went up against better armed, better fighters. The Me-109 was a much better plane, armored with 20mm cannons. And they went up wave after wave and were shot down in wave after wave, and they stopped the Nazis cold. The only way we can prevent our having to fight that battle is if we mass together and fight now. Americans are lazy, and we're self-absorbed, but think about what we like. We like competitions. We like sports, even our cooking shows, cupcake wars. We have time limits. There's winners and losers. There's objective criteria. Americans are last-minute people. Americans are get-her-done people. We're the ones whose parents and grandparents said no to kings and came here for freedom. We're the ones who say no today. Every one of you criticizes somebody in your life who has power. Sometimes you don't want to say it to your wife's face or your boss's face, but you're thinking it and you're going to say it. And if you get pushed far enough, you'll walk out. Now, I'm not suggesting you walk out on your marriages or your jobs. Try and work it out. We don't need to change America. We don't need to change our Constitution. We do need to get rid of the jerks who are in there now.
Woo!
Right. Vote them out. Get rid of the bums.
I could probably go on like this for hours, and it's probably not a good idea because we have a lot of other speakers. So I just want to thank you all for showing up here today and remind you that every one of you is a leader, and that for every one of you, you know 3, 4, 10 people who are open to this argument, who are willing to do a task, and all you need to do is educate them a little bit and give them one little job to do, and when they've done it, they'll come back and ask for more. You're leading because you went first, and you're going to develop them as leaders too. Every one of them needs to spread out and bring more people to this fight. And don't think it has to be just war fighters and guys who are willing to put on uniforms and carry weapons. For every soldier in any battle, you need 100 support personnel. I'll leave you with just a very short little example of what you can do. My wife maintains a politics-free household because I think she'd have to kill me otherwise. And we've been together 30 years. She's a good woman. And she knows about this stuff, and she says, I'll support you, what you're doing, you're good at that, I don't want to do that, I'm not good at that. Like Missy stepping up, we all have something to do. But when we have a local gathering, my wife makes cookies. Doesn't sound like much. You've been to these meetings. After an hour, your feet or your rear end is numb. After 2 hours, your ears are bleeding. You did not have a good experience. You may not want to go back. It was painful to hear all this stuff, especially the unpleasant things about our country, the dangers. But if you had one of her cookies, it wasn't so bad. And if you had 2, you're coming back for more. So I'd like to thank all of you and remind you to do what you can, because those in power want power. That's all, the only thing they're fighting for is what they want. But we need liberty. Thank you.
And he didn't have anything written down. He's impressive, isn't he?
Very.
Awesome. Okay, we'd like to bring up Michael Schaffner.
Some of you might know me as JB. It's a handle that I've earned. Back in 2008, when the truckers went into Harrisburg and Washington, D.C., that was me helping to poke at Washington. We had 450 trucks go in there from, I would say, at least 7 different states. But the thing that you didn't get to see was New York City. We had 12 to 15,000 trucks that were going to roll through Times Square. But when we started to meet early on the morning of May 1st, they shut us down. Yeah, they didn't want that to happen. That's just too much power in the hands of the people. Sorry. They don't like that.
Stop trucking into New York.
Well, you know, we're trying to convince drivers to stop in California. They're getting out of hand. Back last year in October, with the Patriots Ride for the Constitution, myself, Mr. Gronka, we were a part of that as well. Which we went in with the priority to go in and join with the veterans when the memorials were shut down and stand up for our rights. A lot of people within the industry were trying to get us back into our little box, our trucking box, but we wouldn't have nothing of it because it wasn't an event about trucking. We included some of those aspects. And a lot of the people who are involved with the DC committee meetings tried to come in and take over, but we absolutely refused because this was a constitutional issue, and that's why we were there. My brother and I, back through 2009, 2011, we ran Texas Broadcasting Network. That was a lot of fun. I was still out on the road while he basically ran everything, helping to break down what had just come out. One of the things was called Obamacare, which I don't know if, I'm sure many of you might remember something called Hillary Care.
Yep.
They've been trying to pass this through for many years. As you can tell, it's been an obvious agenda for quite some time. Yeah, well, all this fight that comes from within us, my brother and I have been at it for over 20 years. A lot of people ask us, why do you do this? Why do you do this? Well, it's in our blood. I'm a descendant of Alexander Hamilton. Right off the bat, I'd first like to say thank you, myself, personally, to Bill and Missy Longacre, Patriots for the People, Mr. Frank Berger, Shadow Patriots, everyone who made this event possible, absolutely everybody. And I like to explain to people that from the beginning to the end, everyone included, from the people up getting the message out, to the people who do things like setting up the tents, putting up the barricades. Without you, it doesn't happen. Everybody plays an important role. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And like Mr. Gray's wife and her cookies, that's an important part. I want to send out a personal thank you to all the veterans and the current military personnel and all the patriots. Thank you. All the patriots that hold yourself true to your personal oath to the original Constitution. Thank you. Now, there is one thing I'd like to add before I get started. As in the beginning, we stood and took a pledge of allegiance.
it reminds me every time I do that of when I was a kid. We used to, start our day off in school standing at our assigned seats and pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Now that I'm older and I've learned that some of the things that I've learned, one of those things is that I've learned that the United States of America is an incorporation. So I refuse to take a pledge of allegiance to the United States of America. But I do pledge my allegiance to what our founding fathers created, and that was the United States for America. Now, as I stand before you, a humbled man who's been given the honor and the privilege to speak with each and every one of you here today, and of all places to be standing with you, it's here, at what is known as the Crucible of Liberty, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Here we stand side by side with honor and pride at the very place where key events happened that forged together the very souls of the people that fought for the birth of this nation. With the same honor and pride, they showed their commitment to their oath and love for freedom and liberty. Excuse me. History teaches us of their sacrifice, their perseverance, the intestinal fortitude they had to not only endure the battles that they had already made it through, but also their personal struggles within, to stay committed to the fight for what they truly believed that they had a right to, freedom and liberty. As we all know, at that time, some soldiers faced amputation of limbs due to the frostbite and the cold, yet they did not give up. There were some that were battling dysentery due to the conditions that they faced because Congress refused to send the supplies that were greatly needed. And most of them were facing the dreaded disease called smallpox. Now, back then, General Washington had an idea on how to battle this, but it meant soldiers would have to take a chance of contracting the disease. A very small amount of the virus was introduced into the soldiers' open wounds in hopes that their body's immune system was strong enough and worked fast enough to react by building up the necessary white cell reactions needed to protect them from the possible fate that this then deadly virus could bring upon them. These soldiers not only faced the battles in front of them, but they also faced the battles within. General Washington was one of those soldiers that faced the very same things. He not only faced many battles on the field without injury, he faced one of his toughest battles against the very people that he was fighting for. A raging battle with Congress prevented General Washington and his soldiers, again, from continuing to receive the things that were needed on a regular basis to sustain their battle for freedom and liberty. Now, what amazed me the most about what I've learned about General Washington during that time was how he shared his personal commitment, his personal level of integrity from which he held upon himself to God with the soldiers under his command here at Valley Forge. While he spoke with them one day, he called for them to forget the atrocities of the British and look inside themselves at their own sins and right themselves with God so that they may be worthy of this blessing that they were about to receive, their freedom, their liberty, the birth of the United States for America. General Washington and most of his soldiers not only survived the perils of that infamous winter, but they were forged together in their souls with the strength of God, to be far greater than the ruthless armies that the British could handle. I truly believe that this is proof that sometimes God does not want us to turn the other cheek. Resistance to tyranny, which is evil, is obedience to God. Thomas Jefferson said that. Now, during this time, the birth of our nation, the soldiers that stayed here were fighting for the creation and acceptance of the Constitution. And today, we have come here to draw upon that forged strength so that it will ingrain itself into our souls as we face a modern day version of that tyrannical government, which continues on a daily basis to try and destroy the very things those soldiers paid for with their lives and their fortunes: our freedoms, our liberties, our Constitution. At the birth of this nation, our forefathers were very particular about the words that were used as the Constitution was being drafted. There were many, many debates that were full of ideas and opinions about exactly how each article, section, clause, and right were to be written. They even were very particular about the title it was given. When all was said and done, our forefathers knew that when they had accomplished was something that had never in the history of mankind been done before. Such honor and pride was put into it that they even made the statement, only a moral and just society will be able to keep this Constitution alive. Years later, as feared would happen, after the creation of the United States of America, Incorporated, the Constitution was rewritten and adopted illegally and without knowledge of the people, which gave corporations such as the United States of America the same rights as citizens. The change of this Constitution is called the Act of 1871, which actually altered our form of government from what our forefathers paid for with their lives. This change was so subtle as to go undetected for many, many years. The original Constitution was titled the Constitution for the United States for America. In our Constitution, limits, terms, requirements, and rights are only some of the things written into it. Nowhere within this Constitution will you find it stated that the United States for America is a democracy. I believe that this is very important for everyone to understand exactly what it means. In a democracy, any rule, law, or right can be voted by the majority to be changed and taken away, just like that. Yet in a republic, any rule, law, or right of the individual is not only preserved, but it is protected as they are written. For many years, we've listened to our politicians, political analysts, news reporters, and ambassadors lay claim, project, and present to the world that the United States is a democracy. Yet within our very Constitution is something that is known as the Guarantee Clause. As stated in Article 4, Section 4, the United States shall, and I quote, guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them from invasion, and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence. And our government voted and passed the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, claiming to now have the right to violate our First Amendment right which we have the right to redress a grievance and be where we want to be, like here today. It violates our Fourth Amendment to be secure in our persons and our effects. Our Sixth Amendment, which is the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. It even violates our Eighth Amendment of excessive bail, nor cruel and unusual punishment, because as it states in the NDAA, they can disappear you at any time for any given length of time. In the first book of law of the United States, it is explained that there are 4 documents that give us the very foundation for law in this nation. Those 4 documents are the Unanimous Declaration, which is also known as the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, the Holy Bible, and the Constitution. Now let me point out that within the Constitution, there is a supremacy clause, which states that it is the supreme law of the land. Article 6, Clause 2 states, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which will be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state that the contrary notwithstanding." Remember, this is a republic. These laws cannot be changed or abridged when we decide to uphold them. These laws cannot be superseded by some world government of leaders calling themselves the United Nations when we decide to uphold them. These laws cannot be changed by some group of elitists that steal money and resources from every country they go into when we decide to uphold them. So God gave our forefathers the guidance and the strength to deliver us from such evil, as he did Moses, as he does us. And as for those people that are voted into our government to represent us, that have been accepting bribes for their representation, because that's what it is, and we all know that, call it what it is. We the people, the posterity, that our forefathers made sure to include within the Constitution, hereby put you on notice that we will hold you accountable for your actions as prescribed by the law, by the Constitution.
Right.
You do not own us.
Damn straight.
We are not property. We are not here to be test subjects in your transgenic experiments. We know that you were paid to have the USDA approve the use of 2,4-D, also known as Agent Orange, in the new genetically modified corn and soybean seeds, just to poison us. We know that you have put mercury in vaccinations, just to poison us. We know how you looked the other way when DynCorp and Halliburton participated in the child sex slave trafficking. We remember when Barney Frank got caught, he got away with running an underage prostitution service in his apartment in D.C. because he threatened to expose everyone involved. And that was paid for with our tax money. We know that this current administration is using our tax money to arm Al-Qaeda, which are the very same people that our military is fighting against in how many different countries. America, it's time to wake up
Yep.
and hold our representatives accountable for weakening our military and not taking care of our veterans. America, it's time we wake up and hold our representatives accountable for intentionally forcing our jobs out of our country. America, it's time we wake up and hold our representatives accountable for them stealing our money and poisoning our people. America, it's time we wake up and hold our representatives accountable for the crimes against the Constitution, against we the people. And it's also time that we see that once again we are at the crucible of liberty. Are we going to put up with these people letting our military die needlessly? No. Are we going to continue to put up with these people stealing our money and poisoning our children? No. Are we going to continue to put up with these people violating our Constitution, trying to take our rights away? No. So let them hear you loud and clear as you remind them here today. I am an American. I am an American. I am an American. We build it. We fight for it. We pay for it. We live it. This is our country. Thank you.
Pretty excellent speakers we have, huh? I'd like to introduce you to John S. Sinque. Did I pronounce it right?
But I want to thank everybody for, giving me a few minutes to say something. And Bill, thank you very much. Sobering experience being here at Valley Forge. Very humbling. I'm not sure. I've never been here before. I've always wanted to get to this area. When you think about the suffering and the pain and the misery that winter of 1777 and 78 that occurred on the very ground we stand on here, for me, can become, when we start to think about it, can become an emotional gut feeling.
John, can you stand closer to the mic?
Oh,
Thank you.
That has to be better.
Normally, everybody tells me to, tone it down and keep my voice, usually my wife. All right. The people that suffered here, the men and the women, we owe a debt to them. We owe a debt to everybody that came before us. All the veterans, all the people who have suffered needlessly in this country. The travesties that our government in our name has done in the past, and to some point still doing now in our present. We owe a debt to everybody that has come before us and spent their blood and their treasure to defend the freedoms that we are given by God, our natural rights as American citizens. And right now up in Connecticut, we're suffering under some very significant changes to our shall not be infringed Second Amendment rights. With or without the Second Amendment, or with or without the, like JB had mentioned, or even without our Constitution, we still have the rights given to us, our natural rights of man. So you could throw the Constitution out. It's not going to change our rights that are given to us. They're just codified, written down, saying these are your rights, and we're acknowledging that you have these rights, with or without that Constitution. But what we have now, and what we suffer from, are state legislatures and also our federal, clowns down in D.C. who feel that this charter of negative rights, they want to call it, is an impediment to their final plan, their final solution for us as American citizens, and that is subjugation. And it's up to everybody. You haven't had it start here in Pennsylvania. but my main reason for coming up here or traveling down here, you need to stay on top of it. People in the state of Connecticut, a lot of us saw this coming, many did not. They just said it'll never happen here, don't worry about it. And here it is now. Many of us that live in the state of Connecticut are now unconvicted felons. Convictions are coming. They're gonna be pushing this along. I think they're gonna wait till after the election in November. We have this little law that says you have your standard capacity magazine for the weapon that you are in possession of, and you can't have that anymore. They just arbitrarily, you have to get rid of it, or you have to go in and register it like a pedophile, or a. So you have two choices: put your name on a registration list, which will end up in confiscation eventually. It has throughout eons of history. Or you have to decide to say, no, I will not comply. A couple of you might have seen a video kicking around last year that I said I'm not going to comply. I'm not the only one, but I wish more people would kind of put it down on tape, take some heat off. But what we have now, what I'm trying to impress upon everybody here in Pennsylvania, it's coming here. Matt's up from West Virginia. It's coming to West Virginia. It's coming here. As soon as they can finish what they're doing up in Connecticut, and they see that it's going to work, it's coming here. And you're gonna have to make a choice. And you can't make the choice the day they pass the law. That's why a lot of these people stood in line for hours and hours to do their registrations, because they were scared. They didn't have time to think it over. I've talked to people afterwards. They said, "Oh, I feel ashamed, embarrassed. I should have never have done it," because you didn't see it coming. I saw it for 10 years or 15 years. The progression of what is going on. It was an easy decision for me to tell them to pound sand. But they don't care. Those that have the stranglehold on power in these state legislatures, Connecticut being the worst. But look at California, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. It's horrible, and it's coming here. I can guarantee you. Maybe not this year, but it's coming here, and you got to be ready for it. That's all I can say. And you know, I don't know if anybody's ever read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's work, and he finally paid the ultimate price for his words and his actions. The Nazis killed him, but these are words that everybody should live by. That especially if you're just starting to wake up. Not to speak is to speak, and not to act is to act. Those are words that everybody needs to pound into their head. Just because you want to lay low, you don't want to get involved, you're afraid, that's why we get to where we are. But that in itself is speech and is action, and it's horribly crushing. It's coming here. It's coming to Pennsylvania. I don't want to. Everybody else, I can't. It's impossible to follow the speakers ahead of me. They were unbelievable. But just stay vigilant and know the people that are around you. I know you guys have a great group down here. We don't have such quite a cohesion of people in Connecticut yet, working on it. But you guys are spectacular, and you have to count on each other. So, but I'd like to thank everybody for having me. Bill, thank you.
Thank you.
And God bless everybody.
I was out moving around in the crowd here. I spoke to Mike Souders, and I forget how many counties now in Pennsylvania have the Lightfoot militia. I think he said, what? How many counties are in PA? 62? Is it? 67.
67.
And I think he said the militia's in 23 counties. I don't know if is he still here or did he leave? Okay. Thank you for coming. We do have one more speaker.
What is law? Well, anybody says if the government passes it, it's the law, you must obey it. Well, that's what the sheep will say. Well, no. Folks, the things we call laws are not actually laws. They are what is considered to be public policy. I repeat, statutes, ordinances, and case law rulings are not laws. They are what is considered to be public policy. The problem is that the general public never really gets a chance to get involved, since their tyrannical reps in government decide what they want public policy to be without giving the common people the chance to voice their opinion on the subject. And I cannot stress enough that the common people need to have individual opportunity to decide if that public policy is acceptable. Folks, government was created for one and only one purpose: to exert by force necessary to protect the rights and property of everyone who is under the auspices of that government. And since the government was created by the people have the final say, and if the people do not have individual authority to do something, then they cannot delegate that power to their reps in government. And anybody with any bit of common sense understands that if you do not have authority to do something as an individual, then you cannot get together with a group of people and do the same thing, because in your individual capacity, that was an authority you never had. So getting together in a group like a government agency or police department does not grant that authority any better than it did as an individual. The only time coming together in a group is valid and useful is when that collection of force is needed to protect the rights and property of the people who are under the auspices of that specific government. Well, our government has definitely usurped that, no question, and we need to wake up the sheeple, because as long as there's people saying if the government says you must do it, then you must obey it, well, then we're going to have some serious problems. So, well, even though the Constitution doesn't technically exist, since anyone who's read Lysander Spooner's book No Treason knows that the Constitution was not passed with the consent of the people, therefore it is an illegal document, that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep the spirit of the Constitution alive and well, because if the spirit of the Constitution is not kept alive, then we could be in a lot of trouble, because people are under the false impression that your rights come from the Constitution. No, they come from the Creator, also known as infinite consciousness by those in the metaphysical community. So, keep your rights and long live the Constitution. Thank you.
I wasn't going to say anything, but JB said, no, go ahead, speak from your heart. I want to talk about my dad just for a few minutes. My father was one of 11 siblings that were born and raised in Klaipėda, Lithuania. He loved his motherland. They were raised Catholic. Good people. I was raised on many of those ethnic traditions and beliefs. My father's family saw the Red Army coming, and they had a good friend of theirs bring them the documents, and my Uncle Tony, God bless his soul, took a potato, cut it in half, carved the correct stamp to get them out of the communist party that was coming to take over Lithuania, and they fled. They fled towards Europe and towards Germany, thinking they were safe. 2 of those 11 siblings, plus my grandparents, ended up being caught, and it took them many years to get out and escape from Hitler's regime. One of the members went to England, the rest went to Canada. My father and his brother, my Uncle Adam, finally made it to the United States after many years. It was something like 5, 6, 7 years of waiting to get here. And they had a host family, guaranteed a job before they were allowed in here. My father shared some of the war stories that he witnessed while he was there. He shared some of the atrocities that happened by very evil, selfish, greedy men. My father passed. It'll be 2 years come this November from Alzheimer's. I miss him terribly. I wish he was still here, and I wish if he was, that he would have his sense to understand what's going on in this country. I so desperately need him to talk to him about this now. But I think back about some of the stories and the conversations, and I fear that if we don't stand united, that what my father fought for, to make sure that he could come here and start a family in the greatest country in the world. This is what he always insisted. This is the greatest country in the world. His dream is going to perish. I'm so glad to be a part of this. I'm so blessed to listen to these people and know that there are so many of us that are fighting. And please teach your children, teach your grandchildren, because if not, what my father and my uncle saw is going to repeat itself. And I thank you all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Excellent people that are still here. This is Sergeant Robert Mansfield. He was one of our speakers. He arrived a little bit late. He had his times confused. But he's going to speak to you, and I really think you want to hear what he has to say because he's an excellent speaker.
Bill, Missy, thank you for inviting me here. What an honor to be here. Adam, who else here that I see? Dan Gray, obviously, what an honor to be here. Quick, before we go on to what are my brief comments. This week we had a what they called a botched execution. I called it justice. I think that's how most execution, or all executions should go, with a busted heart. Secondly, we had, let me give kudos to the district attorney for prosecuting an illegal immigrant who raped and savagely maimed a lady from North Philadelphia. After about 25 years of him serving time here in Pennsylvania, he'll go back to Guatemala. Finally, in the I can't believe he did this file, a man who was on trial for auto theft steals a car so that he can make his court appointment. Real smart. Book of Acts, chapter 19, verses 11 to 19. And Paul did exceedingly great works in Ephesus. While in Ephesus, by the way, I'm paraphrasing this. While in Ephesus, he was pushing back against the aberrant theology of the day. As Paul was doing his ministry, there were 7 sons of the chief priests who were casting out demons in the name of Jesus, of whom Paul preaches. And they came upon this one man, and he said, Paul, I know. Jesus, I know. But who are you? And that's the topic I wish to come from this afternoon. Who are you? We are living in a time where my generation, which is chronicled as or classified as the crunch generation, views freedom 180 degrees different than that of the founding fathers. And if my generation continues down this path, that freedom is unsustainable. We need to turn back and go back to the founding principles. I remember yesterday I was in a store and I had to remind the young man not to yell my name and my telephone number and my social security number out in the general public. I don't want to give up my 4th Amendment right, nor do I want to give up my 5th Amendment right just because it's cool, hip, or fashionable. The NSA is not fashionable, it's not hip, and it's not cool. The Constitution is not a living, breathing document, but a structural document designed to limit government. I encourage you to continue to push back in Harrisburg, in Philadelphia, in Montgomery County, in Washington, against those who believe that this is a living, breathing document, and it can be changed at will, that we can infer rights that are not there. I hate to break it to all those who are married, but I do not see an enumerated right to marriage, particularly between Adam and Steve. There isn't no enumerated right there. I understand the 14th Amendment. I understand the argument, but it's still going too far. As many of you know, my background is one of horror. But I'm here to tell you that I am fearfully and wonderfully made by the Lord. Therefore, therefore, those lame, disabled politicians who come to me with average constitutional rights, I can push back. I encourage all of you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made by God. And when Christ shows up, it's not a I can do some things, I can do all things. You can do all things. Push back. Fight back. Defend your Second Amendment rights. Defend your Fourth Amendment rights. And defend the Fifth Amendment rights. Because if you do not have a Second Amendment, you don't have a Constitution. Finally, the final part of that story in Acts, when the demon asked, "Who are you?" those men couldn't answer the question and ended up leaving being beaten and naked. I think it's about time that we leave some of these politicians naked in terms of their philosophy on the Constitution and expose them for who they are. And on a brief note, Bill Press yesterday said that Benghazi was a phony issue. No. 4 people died. That's not a phony issue.
Hillary lied.
That's right. Hillary lied. 4 people died, including Ambassador
Stevens.
Blame it on the brain injury. So I'm honored to be here today with you. I'm honored to stand here with you. I am proud that you're here. Wish there were more. Continue this fight. Continue to pass these values down to your children. For every time I got knocked down, I got back up. And every time I got back up, I was a blessing to someone within my realm, my sphere. My friends, we may be down right now, but get back up and reach those around you so that we can have a generation that understands freedom, that understands that what we see on television isn't relevant. Our Constitution is relevant. Let us continue that fight. May God bless you and keep you, and may the Lord greatly shine His blessings upon you. God bless you.
Amen.
I'd like to add a couple things just quickly. Thank you to Sergeant Robert Mansfield. Highly decorated.
When are you running for office?
He is, I think he has at least 15 citations and several medals. And we're honored to have him here. Believe it or not, there were some more people here earlier. But that's it. If anybody else would like to say anything, I want to thank you. And we're just going to sit back and eat some lunch and relax. And Dan Gray, thank you. Everybody here, thanks again. And at 2 o'clock, we're going to line up down there. Looks like there's only going to be 4 or 5 motorcycles. If anybody else wants to come with us, the Philadelphia police are going to give us an escort. And there's going to be an escort through Belmont Avenue, down through Fairmount Park, to the Art Museum, and to Martin Luther King Boulevard. So if you'd like to come, just line up behind the motorcycles and we can all go together. Thank you. Trish, with Shadow Patriots has been a big help throughout this whole thing. Roger Dodger came all the way in from Pittsburgh. The Patriots that showed up, the militia, all you guys, you're awesome. So if you'd like to say something, now's the time to come up here and hop in on this mic. And I want to thank you all for coming today.
Thank you. You're the man. Thank you.
Yes.
You're on film right now.
Hi! March on Valley Forge Park when the government was shut down.
I saw that.
1,000 people, that was us.
That was awesome.
Yep.
That was great.
That was us. Citizens for Liberty, Montgomery County. I don't mean blue, I mean the name blue. Yeah, I
He wanted nothing to do with that, and he is very proud to be an American. Greatest country in the world. It is the greatest country in the world. There is no...
I don't even want